All right, over 67 million people watched this week's debate. That is a great sign for the American people. And one of the biggest headlines that we are still talking about, I cannot believe we are, and we are because he won't stop talking about it, is what is happening in Springfield, Ohio. Donald Trump talked about it again today, this ridiculous insistence that illegal immigrants are stealing, killing, and eating pets. Donald Trump again is insisting it's true. It is not. Why is he doing this? How is this helping him with undecided voters, which he actually needs?
I mean, that's almost unanswerable. I can't say that it is. Like, I don't think it's appealing to those people. I think it's appealing to people who believe a conspiracy theory. And just pick apart, like what you said there, illegal immigrants. These are Haitian immigrants who have temporary protected status. These are not illegal immigrants that he's talking about. And you have what's happening in Springfield. J.D. Vance just today tweeting that they're spreading communicable diseases. The Department of Health has said that is untrue. And the only thing that is happening, frankly, is bomb threats to local elementary schools. And a heartbroken father who's had to tell people to stop using his son as a prop. That's what's happening. That's the real stuff that's happening.
Just think about that. These real world consequences, the bomb threats, the schools closing. Do they care? I mean, what's the point of this? But what I want to understand is, what is the point of this?
The point is to try to drill down on, like, at the very base of what they're trying to do is they're trying to say that because there's a high level of immigration to this country, that is bad. And because Kamala Harris is in favor of open borders, which she is actually not, no Democrat that I'm aware of in elected office is actually in favor of fully open borders. They argue, though, that anything that an immigrant does is the fault of all immigrants at this point. And so they're trying to make this very basic argument about immigration, but because the people they're trying to reach and trying to communicate with are in this right-wing bubble, they're just so in a little torrid mass amongst themselves where they can't communicate with anyone outside of that bubble anymore. So they keep leaning into these weird racist memes and trying to bring attention to them in hopes of getting to that core issue, but probably turning off undecideds who are like, well, yeah, I don't like people crossing the border illegally, but what are you talking about?
Is there a chance, though, that Republicans or Donald Trump is getting his wish? Right? People are going to dismiss the cat stealing and eating, but he does now have people focused on immigration. And there are people out there going, what? The town is overrun. The town is at max capacity. This is a problem. Yeah. And the national news is now focused on an immigration problem. And we wouldn't be talking about it this week had he not pushed these lies.
I think you picked the wrong state, okay? Like, he's going to win Ohio. I mean, I'd be focused on Arizona or, one of these states where it's obviously on the border. So Texas doesn't really work. And so when I think about it, it's really something we've all become immune to. It's the politics of fear and cruelty. And that's something that we've heard for 9 years now. When you think about that, all it does, it's fan service, right, for his base. So when he says it at an event like that with 67 million people watching, 34 million of them are really jacked up about it. They're really excited about it. And then he doubles down. And that's a really great narrative for him. And this is something he's done again and again and again.
But Dan, it only worked in 2016, right? In 2016, he ran, on fear-mongering. But he also won because he was somebody new. He was somebody different. People didn't know what they were getting. By the 2018 midterms, when he was pushing the caravan lie, day in and day out, up until the day of the midterms, those caravans never showed up, and he never mentioned it again. So people have seen this tired game, and not enough of them will vote for him to win.
Right, but he's on his heels right now. When you think about it, you just mentioned 2018. He is has the biggest upset in the history of U.S. politics, but then he became the biggest loser. When you think about 2018, 2020, and 2022, that's it. He's over. It's done. As far as, a certain amount of people, we know what it is. There's probably 80 million people who feel that way. We're talking about 100 or maybe 150,000 people who have to see it the way that we're articulating it right here, and that's the game for the next 53 days.
Fallon, you follow all that happens on the internet. We see the memes going crazy over this conspiracy theory and crushing him. But what does it take to get them to stop? Because there are a lot of people who believe it. What will stop the conspiracy theories from going mainstream?
Well, definitely not the memes, because the memes are everywhere right now. I mean, you can't open TikTok without someone doing a remix of the eating the cat, eating the dog soundbite. So what it's going to take is, I think, these social media platforms having stronger fact checkers, having more moderation.
Oh, good luck with that.
Elon Musk today shared a video of someone saying that, their father did eat cats, and so right now we're in a place where social media is still so unregulated. It is still the Wild West. And I think these conspiracy theories are still going to run wild. And the problem is they become a joke. So they're funny, but then they're repeated, millions of times. Just that soundbite of the eating the cats, eating the dogs has been just listened to on TikTok tens of millions of times. And it's been used in videos over 77,000 times. So we're going to just keep hearing these things repeated and repeated, even if they're in joke form, and they will not stop until somebody steps in, a tech company, social media company, and they say, we will not allow even a joke of a conspiracy theory on
Or dare I say, regulators. All right, Hayes, then you have the hardest question.
Oh, gosh.
Why is this race still so tight? Kamala Harris, at this point, has endorsements from AOC and Dick Cheney. Okay, that is the definition of a broad coalition. And Donald Trump has even rejected the support of Nikki Haley. He can't even see the center. So why is this race so tight?
I think this race is still so tight because you do still have enough people in enough states who are waiting to see what happens and who are trying to make the choice between, okay, do I go with Kamala Harris even though I don't agree with her policies, or Donald Trump even though I don't agree with him as a person? I think that's the real question that just enough people in just enough states are asking themselves still somehow.
But she knows this, and her policies are more centrist than Joe Biden's are, right?
Yeah.
She hears that, so she has moved to the center, yet we don't even, what are Donald Trump's policies? Mass deportation and mega tariffs that are only going to hurt the economy. So what is it when, you know what, you're getting this question. There's tons of people in business, right, who make this argument like, well, yes, regulation, lots of people in the business world don't like Lena Khan. Regulation is an issue. So what is it when they're like, I don't know her well enough, but I'm down with his policies? What?
Yeah, so with lower taxes, obviously, deregulation. I think there's a really good chance that if Kamala was to win.
With the lower taxes. Not everybody's going to get their taxes lowered. Corporations are. The wealthiest Americans. So it's like, who do you want to, is it, you want to expand the child tax credit? You want to help people start businesses or buy homes? Or do you want to have corporate tax cut? You're helping one side or the other. It's not like he's for lowering taxes. He's not.
Right. I mean, what she needs to do is she has to get away from Bidenomics, right? And she has to articulate how she is going to use tariffs in the way that will be actually, fend off China a little bit, but not hurt the center of America, the manufacturing base here. And I think you just articulated very well. Trump talks about tariffs like all that money is going to go into the Treasury or something like that. And all it does is it's actually very inflationary.
Yeah.
If you look at the existing policies that we have right now, we are keeping China at bay. China's economy is so bad right now, and they actually have the potential to export deflation. So we've been so focused on inflation. And listen, a lot of people are really hurting right now. The cumulative effects of inflation. But you know what's come in really hard? Crude oil's come in really hard. There's interest rates are coming down right now. So there's a lot of things that might end up being a tailwind for the U.S. consumer. And so I think that's how she has to really start to focus on what is her plan to build on some of the things that are coming around right here her way. And the last thing I'll just say is, this is not, you say it all the time, the stock market is not the economy. Yeah. The stock market is at all-time highs right now, right? And so if this was Trump, he'd be saying, you're welcome, America. Here's an S&P 500, which is the big index, right? That's at all-time highs, up 18% on the year. But they're just not going to get into that game. They're going to focus on the things that's going to help everyday Americans.
Okay, but you know what? Why the hell does she have to explain herself down to every single policy and every word? He sure as heck never has. Look what he said this week on health care, right? He has dunked on Obamacare for 9 straight years, and his answer was, I have concepts. Can you imagine if she said, I've got concepts?
This was the wildest thing to me about the debate, because going in, it felt so unfair. It was like Kamala Harris has to walk this line where she holds him to account, but she doesn't look too harsh. And Donald Trump just needs to not be openly racist. And like that was, and I was like, what? Like
And somehow he failed at that.
Why does he get this curve? Like, what is this? And yeah. I mean, she has to, but at the same time, it does feel unfair.
For young people, what is it? What's keeping them not voting yet?
Well, what's keeping them not voting yet is being really frustrated with the Biden administration, feeling like Kamala Harris is an extension of the Biden administration. And truthfully, that has a lot to do with Israel and Gaza. And also some young people obviously not wanting to vote for Trump because, you know, he's Trump. And so they're like, I don't have a party in this. I don't have a dog in this fight. My vote doesn't matter. And so they don't want to get involved. They think Kamala Harris is an extension of Biden and that Trump is going to just ruin America. But it's obvious, Stephanie.
Okay.
If they sit out, they don't have a voice.
But then help me with this, right? So the young person who says, listen, I don't like her policies, but I don't like his personality. What are his policies that they like? Because if you're saying they're really unhappy about Israel and Gaza, do they know what he's going to do?
That's the problem, though. That's the thing. A lot of people say it's Israel and Gaza, and maybe things get a little better under Kamala Harris, or it's Gaza's wiped off the face of the earth under Trump. And there are people online, there are people on social media who are trying to explain that. It's like yes, neither situation is perfect for what some of these young people want, but one sure is a heck of a lot better than the other.